Welcome to Paradigm Threat, the online repository for investigating alternate theories of Earth's origin and other controversial topics. My name is Arya Sulin. In this video, I'll be discussing our project, the alternate timeline of Earth's history based on the ancient testimony of Saturnian Cosmology. So what is Saturnian Cosmology? It is not the traditional narrative handed down as the history of everything. It is an alternate premise based on the careful study of worldwide myth, archetypes, and iconography that mythology, although obfuscated over time, remains a true and reliable source of ancient testimony from our ancestors of the Earth's history and its creation. Since the establishment of the electric universe paradigm in 2004, plasma physics experiments in laboratories like the Sapphire Project were able to reproduce many of the mythical archetypes in ancient testimony. These discoveries are completely ignored by world academia and remain unknown to the general public. The objective of this timeline is to compile an alternate history of Earth based on testimony of Saturnian cosmology as an accessible sequence of events from the first memory until modern day. I'm hoping this project helps others navigate the dissonance of consensus and be able to visualize the creation of our world and solar system. Saturnian cosmology provides answers to questions other cosmologies neglect to ask, like what sequence of events led us from then to now, and why did each sequential event lead to the next. The Big Bang scientific theory suggests how the universe started, how stars were created, how galaxies are created, and the Earth itself, but fails to answer these fundamental questions. Big Bang cosmology states the universe is 13.7 billion years old, starting from a single creation event and forever expanding. All continents, mountains, canyons of the Earth formed gradually over 4.5 billion years. Humans evolved from monkeys and began to use tools 3.3 million years ago, and then formed the first cities only 5,000 years ago. This theory is taught to children in school around the world as fact, where each sequence of events allegedly occurs over millions or billions of years. This overwhelming cosmology leaves a child feeling tiny and insignificant, like they are not part of history. In contrast to Big Bang cosmology, we have creationist cosmology, where the Earth was created by God in a 6-day Genesis event. This theory is taught to children in religious institutions around the world as fact. This cosmology informs the child that they are part of a chosen people existing at the very center of history, or not chosen, implying they or others are not part of history. Some creationists interpret the Genesis event as 6 24-hour periods, while others allow for millions or even billions of years within the creation week. They regard the Genesis story as legitimate Earth history. However, the more open-minded creationists do not conflate the creation of the Earth with the alleged creation of the universe. Parents who attempt to pass the Genesis narrative down to their children often find it to be unsatisfactory and contradictory explanation of how we got from there to here. This is because the religious texts of the world have been redacted from their original form, sometimes republished as many as 20 times, like the Quran was. The dark perspectives exhibited in these biblical stories are nothing more than a reflection of the mindset of those who rewrote and mass-produced the books, and the common themes presented in these books are often inappropriate for children. The fundamental belief systems of Christians, Muslims, and Jews, and many other faiths are nearly identical, and yet we have seen religious wars spanning centuries with no end in sight. A common question that comes up is religion causing most of the wars? Although some media personalities will insist the answer is no, the answer is actually yes. When a religion describes a society as the chosen people of God, that religion manufactures enemies out of the unchosen, who are not part of God's plan. The society then fills in the blanks as necessary, debasing and dehumanizing others as being dirty, despicable, worthless, or even non-human. We all know what happens then to these people who are not part of God's plan. Apartheid, forced migration, genocide. By presenting an alternative cosmology, I'm hoping this project will also have the residual effect that enables people to discuss their ancient history without having to resort to violence. So, Saturnian cosmology, what is the story? Well, we've all heard the conclusions derived from C14 carbon dating regarding the age of the Earth, but radioactive decay doesn't make a great story. How about instead of telling a story about the rock's hypothetical age, we should be telling the stories that were carved on the rocks millions of times by those who were actually there. After all, why wouldn't we trust the testimony of our ancestors? This reconstruction of events is based on a myriad of surviving indigenous records, which allows us to reinterpret the Earth's origin story in great detail, using words and pictures left behind by our ancestors who were alive when it all happened. The first memory in ancient testimony, agreed upon by different civilizations that never met or traded, is the turning wheel of heaven in Cosmic Mountain, or Bowl of Heaven. This period of stable collinear configuration is remembered throughout the civilizations of Earth as the Golden Age. The Hindu texts Brahma, Yama, Vishnu, and Manu describe this age as the brilliant Yima. To the Chinese, it was the reign of Yellow Emperor Wang Tai, founder of Taoism. In Northern Europe, the Peace of Frodi. In the Christian Bible, this 930-year period was the Garden of Eden. Configuration was also described in ancient testimony as the myth of Yggdrasil, the world tree. The configuration held each planet in place. Each planet was called a Heim, which translated to house. There was Muspelheim, the realm of fire, which is Mercury, Alfheim, the bright realm, Venus, Midgard, the middle land, Earth, down here, in the middle, Jotunheim, frozen realm, Mars. Asgard was the realm of the Aesir, Jupiter. Vanaheim was the realm of the Vanir, Saturn. In the northern hemisphere, from anywhere on Earth, one could look northward and see, in order, Mars, Venus, and then the gas giant Saturn. Behind Saturn was the gas giant Jupiter. It was hidden. It was not yet visible. Behind Jupiter, at an angle, was our sun, giving off light. Altogether, they formed the unmistakable star and crescent in the sky worshipped throughout the Persian, Roman, Byzantine, and Ottoman empires, and throughout Islam today. This crescent was slowly rotating, causing a separation between night and day. On the southern hemisphere, Anthony Peratt described the ancient testimony of three intense plasmoids in the southern region of the world. These plasmoids were the planets Mercury, Neptune, and Uranus, forming the lower end of the Saturnian collinear configuration. The Old Norse Icelandic textbook, the Prose Edda, states, "Still there was a world to the south, which was called Muspelheim. It is light and hot, and so bright and dazzling that no stranger who is not native there can stand it." Many authors have already done the hard work matching up these archetypes to their original historic events. Author Annis Pepin Scott describes the stairway myth, I quote, "Might the flowing hair of Venus, or fiery dragon, actually have been the glowing ions of twisted Birkeland currents, or stringy things, as modern astronomers prefer to call them. Pictographs showing ladder formations and tales of a stairway to heaven or a Jacob's ladder might be based on sightings of Birkeland currents and other plasma instabilities," end quote. In The Myth of the Golden Age, 1997, David Talbot describes the Garden of Eden period. Quote, "This world was quite other than what it is today. The trees were forever in fruit, the animals lived in perfect harmony, and the little agouti played fearlessly with the beard of the jaguar," end quote. By the end of this period, each planet in the configuration had become fully charged, like a capacitor, unable to accept more charge or grow larger in size. An analogy would be a mother bird pushing reluctant, overgrown babies out of a nest. It's natural, it's part of life, and it happens all the time. Unfortunately, this meant that the golden age of the collinear configuration violently came to an end. The age of cataclysm would begin. As Earth and the other planets were ejected from the Saturn brown dwarf system, they passed through Saturn's plasma layers, causing them to cool into salt water, becoming heavy, crashing to the Earth as the great first deluge, recorded by each civilization. From Old Testament perspective, humans could not contemplate why their creator, planet Saturn, had tossed them out of its Garden of Eden, the collinear configuration, changing their worlds for the worse, but matters would continue to get worse. Detached from the collinear configuration, each planet became subjected to the influence of the brown dwarf Saturn. From Earth, humans watched as the other planets and moons violently flip polarity and fall into the gaping mouth of Saturn. Roman mythology describes the Titan Cronus, seeing his rule threatened by his own children, begins to devour each one until Jupiter, Zeus, intervenes. In this period, some humans erect graven images of the Bowl of Heaven and sacrifice the weakest of their brood in order to convince the fictional deity Moloch to restore the Golden Age. This story is compelling, isn't it? Why have we not heard this narrative before? The simple answer is because academic and religious institutions refuse to touch it. Our history belongs to us, not to corporations and not to religious institutions. This is why Paradigm Threat commits to zero corporate or religious influence. The history of Earth is not intellectual property. Media producers tend to regard this area of research spanning from unprofitable to downright threatening. As a result, the only animated reconstruction of these events I've ever found was a 1996 documentary by David Talbot called Remembering the End of the World. This documentary features a crude 7-minute CGI rendering of the testimony of the ancients as a literal description of actual events. The first recorded memory of Earth is the collinear configuration of Saturn, appearing as a huge stationary body in the celestial pole. Venus appeared squarely in the center of Saturn. Mars appeared inside of Venus. Jupiter was hidden behind Saturn and not yet visible. Also hidden behind the configuration at a 27-degree angle was refracted illumination from our Sun. Plasma would periodically be seen stretching from Venus towards Saturn. In periods of stability, these radiating streams appeared as 3-pointed and 4-pointed star-like patterns. Over time, the debris field surrounding the Sun dissipated. A more clearly defined cycle of night and day began on Earth. A bright crescent appeared on Saturn, created by light from our Sun. As the Earth rotated upon the axis mundi, navel of the world, the crescent visually turned around the polar center. This was the cosmic wheel or bowl of heaven. Smaller planet Mars was progressively destabilized and appeared to descend from its central position as it moved closer to Earth. It returned to the central position and then descended still further, growing larger with each descent. As it continued to descend, the outer shell of Mars collapsed and began to extend towards the Earth. When it visually dropped below Venus, a stream of material was seen stretching between Mars and Venus. Lateral displacements of both Venus and Mars would occur. Plasma and debris spiral between the two planets, and eventually the spiraling material gathers into a band encircling Venus, remembered as the Ouroboros. The outer shell of Mars recombines into its original spherical shape. As the planetary system moved through space, the appearance of the bands changed dramatically. As the vertical movements of Mars continued, its outer shell would again come apart and stretch towards the Earth. Eventually, this material would reach the Earth, with disastrous effects. When the skies cleared, the stream of debris was seen moving away, attracted upwards by the electrically charged inner shell of Mars, appearing as the apex of an illuminated column. This common archetype was remembered as the Bowl of Heaven, the Cosmic Mountain, the Holy Grail, the Sword in the Stone, as well as the fall of the first Tower of Babel, and many, many other world myths. Visible in the southern hemisphere of the Earth, but not in this animation, was the Apsu layer, also known as the Abyss in the Christian Bible. This seal represented multiple outer layers of Saturn's plasma sheath that appeared to humans as obscuring equatorial rings of a cosmic sea in the southern sky. The stable period of Saturn's domination ended with the collapse of the planetary configuration. Jupiter appeared for the first time as Saturn tumbled from its collinear stationary position. The planets had been connected in series like an array of batteries, coupled from north to south pole. They would now be entering a nonlinear round table configuration with their poles connected in parallel. This configuration grew wider and more unstable as it orbited the Sun. The planets competed in this new orbit, which led to a period of great confusion and upheaval as humans of Earth witnessed epic drama unfold between Jupiter, Mars, and Venus that would eventually cause the breakup of the temporary configuration. This history would be remembered as the myth of King Arthur, Guinevere, and Lancelot, and the Knights of the Round Table. So, what was left out of that 7-minute reconstruction from the 90s? Back then, computer animation could not achieve the level of detail required to depict events from our ancient testimony. Also, plasma physics had not been understood yet, or discovered. At the very least, much of the story was left out. For example, in 2167 BCE, the gas giant Jupiter, appearing on a massive coma-tail plasma outpouring, appeared as a mountain on the horizon. becomes for the first time exposed to the sun's energy and catches on fire for 20 straight years. In Hebrew and Egyptian tradition, the burning bush was a sign that God, Jupiter, wasn't happy with his creation, humanity. The text recalls the earth groaning and the ground vibrating, and a trumpeting sound was heard and felt by every creature on the planet up to 613 times. Humans interpreted each exaltation as a new commandment spoken directly by God. This became the basis of the 10 or 613 commandments of the Mosaic Covenant. The same myth features the redacted Bible story of the Exodus from the Pyramidal Empire. On April 19, 1492 BCE, planet Jupiter unexpectedly expels Venus as a massive comet that passes over Earth's sky and heads towards the Sun. The passage of Venus in close proximity to the Earth results in further plagues. Seeing the approach of this angel of death, the terrified population makes ram sacrifices and splashes the blood on the side of their houses. With the departure of the planets from the nonlinear orbit dominated by Jupiter, the pyramids would no longer function as communication gateways. The empire loses its ability to communicate between locations and simulate deities within the pyramidal chambers. People quickly lose faith in the stone idols, as the deities fall permanently silent. This event perpetually proved that the ruling faction did not speak for any gods, visible or invisible. All systems of control rapidly fall apart, and the pyramidal empire finally comes to an end. Without servants, many hundreds of massive pyramids across the Earth become uninhabitable and are abandoned. For the next 50 years, the planet Venus appears as a comet in Earth's sky until it too becomes fully charged by the Sun's energy, causing a violent flip in its polarity. This state transition would force Venus into a nosedive toward its final orbit around the Sun. During this transition, the Earth is subject to incredibly strong tilt in the Sun's magnetic current flow, which passes from pole to pole through the Earth. This temporary shift of the Earth's poles resulted in the appearance of the Sun reversing its motion in the sky, as recorded in Joshua 10-13. The Sun's proximity to Venus calms the dragon's rage, as the gas planet transforms back into a spherical shape, and the memory of the planet Venus as the dragon or the comet fades into myth. And yet, in pictures of Chinese dragon, there is often a picture of a planet or a sun. Between 806 and 687 BCE, the magnetospheres of Earth and Mars would occasionally overlap their orbits. The planets would come into proximity, and large-scale electric discharge would occur between them, increasing their orbital gap and furthering altering their orbiting periods. With each encounter, the calendars would have to be adjusted to accommodate for the change in the length of the year. Over the next 119 years, Earth would experience 9 encounters with Mars, resulting in planet-wide lightning storms. During these deadly encounters, the Earth's surface acted as a cathode, absorbing a constant stream of energy from the anodal surface of Mars. Electric current flowed through the Earth, making caves unreliably sanctuaries. This prompted humans to learn how to harness electricity in a bid to survive the storms. By the end of this event, the iron shell of Prairie Mars permanently comes apart and forms the asteroid belt, but also scatters dense iron across the Earth's surface. This event kickstarts the Iron Age, as humanity receives one more parting gift of metallurgy from Prometheus before Mars vanishes forever into a final orbit, appearing as a red speck in the night sky. Contemplating the nature of electromagnetic induction, humans built the first cathedrals and minarets. These hollow-spired designs routed electricity around the structure, preventing heat from building into electrostatic discharge, and thus protecting its inhabitants. All cathedrals originally provided sanctuary from interplanetary lightning storms. Fascinating, no? For over a century now, academic and religious institutions have abandoned their responsibility towards objectivity, having a tendency to overpromote one hypothetical theory at the expense of all the others. This project will compile multimedia presentations bringing to life the ancestral testimony of Saturnian cosmology, so that people may be given the opportunity to decide for themselves today, rather than waiting for the day academia at large finally begins to take alternate cosmology seriously. Maybe we can learn how to stop fighting over religion once and for all. So our goals are to complete an Earth history timeline from the first memory till modern day. We will remove historic and political biases and restore objectivity and neutrality to the story. We will determine cause and effect relationships between sequential historic events. This is very important, to know the cause and effect relationship between events. We will also create age-appropriate multimedia content visualizing Genesis events. Age-appropriate content is also very important. We will create a full-length CGI documentary depicting Earth's creation. Nothing like this has ever been attempted before. Zero corporation and sponsorship and zero religious influence is our commitment. This investigation into Earth's history is ongoing, and many corrections will be made as new evidence is brought to light and more acute conclusions are drawn. The current timeline is a work in progress and can be found on the paradigmthreat.net website right now. If you want to support this investigation, you can do so on Patreon. Your financial support makes it possible for us to remain independent and safeguard this project from those who would compromise our mutual history for their own personal agenda. With your support, we can do this. My name is Arya Sulin, and thank you for watching.